Welcome back to Cheddar on this Tuesday morning. I'm Tim Stennebeck. Well, the UK is cracking down on its stay-at-home efforts amid the coronavirus pandemic. Prime Minister Boris Johnson announcing new measures restricting when people can go outside. Joining us now live from London is Thomas Cole, international political analyst, former EU negotiator, and former head of the People's Vote campaign. Thomas, thanks for joining us. What are you seeing in the UK today? What's the experience there? What's the environment there?
Sure, Tim. Well, thanks a lot. First of all, thank you for having me on again. I guess it's crazy times, which we're all experiencing all over the world. And in the UK, I think in the end, these measures weren't surprising. They were definitely coming. We'd seen up until now the UK take a slightly different approach to other countries, including many other European countries. And ultimately at the weekend, when we saw many people outside making use of what has been a particularly, what was a good weekend for weather in the UK, it's pretty sunny, people out in national parks, the beaches. And I think Boris Johnson's government realized that they had to do something, and they had to start being stricter in the measures which they were enforcing, which up until now had been more advisory. And yeah, I guess it's kind of crazy. You have to be, you're allowed out really only once a day to do grocery shopping, or you can, if necessary, you can go and pick up medicine. You are allowed out to do exercise once a day as well. And I guess this is only day one. These measures are in place for 3 weeks at least. And I guess this will be the new normal for a while. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it is. And look, I can totally relate to you, given what we're feeling here in New York City. So let's go through some of these measures, which you can see right here. The plan includes some exemptions for necessary shopping and exercise. Look, in your opinion, and given what we're seeing around the world, is this enough to curb the spread of COVID-19?
I mean, I think it's a good step in the. I mean, look, and I'm not a medical practitioner, but based on the science which I have seen, and there was the report from Imperial College London, which, correct me if I'm wrong, I think was also cited by the Trump administration in one of their press conferences last week, which had shown which this herd immunization approach, which had been taken by the UK government up until last week, was likely to lead up to 250,000 deaths. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I hope that the spread can be contained. The curve, from what I'm seeing, we're up to, as of yesterday, 6,650 cases in the UK, 335 deaths. Unfortunately, that curve is still quite steep. And other countries which are further along, although had been hit much, much worse than the UK, Italy, for example, slowly some good news there, seeing the curve there slowly starting to flatten, both on number of cases and also number of deaths. So I hope they are enough, because until now, and Boris Johnson has been criticized, including across the media spectrum, the political spectrum, by essentially only giving advice, where in times like this, you have to be a little bit more draconian, you've got to be a little bit stricter, and you've really got to give, I guess, rules, orders, and directions. It's not a nice thing to have to do in any kind of democracy. You want to be able to have some kind of debate. But if all you're doing is giving advice, and that advice isn't being adhered, then unfortunately you have to start clamping down. It's not fun, but it's human lives at the end of the day, and it affects all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. Prime Minister Johnson urging the public to stay at home in an address last night. Thomas, let's take a listen to what he had to say.
Sure.
But in this fight, we can be in no doubt that each and every one of us is directly enlisted. Each and every one of us is now obliged to join together to halt the spread of this disease, to protect our NHS, and to save many, many thousands of lives.
Look, I got to get your opinion on this, because this is not what we're seeing from the leader of the United States right now. What's your response to the way that Prime Minister Boris Johnson appealed and pleaded with your fellow citizens?
I think it was the right thing to do. I mean, I think especially looking at least the TV pictures from the weekend, where we saw people really making use of the good weather, and, who can blame them? We've had a long winter. Suddenly the weather starts to improve a little bit. The sun's shining. People want to get outside. I totally understand that. But at the same time, we are living through uncertain times. This is a virus where a vaccine hasn't been found yet. And it's not so much about those of us who are fit and healthy, who may contract it and may only have mild diseases. This is about those who are, who have underlying conditions, or those people who are elderly, or who are less mobile, who, if we were to get in contact with people who were to be, I guess, have a higher risk of being infected and infected badly, then of course, then there's a higher chance of them being infected badly. So I think it's about taking, I guess, personal responsibilities here for, for for humankind as a whole. Not wanting to sound too dramatic there, but I think President Trump's announcement yesterday, essentially suggesting that maybe eventually economics could hold sway over health. And I appreciate those weren't his exact words, but that was the kind of the indication that maybe in 15 days' time in the US things could change. I can't see that happening in this country, and I can't see that happening elsewhere in Europe either. I think there's a real concern, and people understand that, albeit the economics aren't great, measures have been put in place, I should say, from the I guess the UK equivalent of the US Treasury Secretary, so the UK equivalent of Steve Mnuchin, a guy called Rishi Sunak, who's the Chancellor of the Exchequer, putting in measures so for the state to cover people's wages, salaries up to £2,500 a month. A stimulus package worth 15% of UK GDP was announced last week. 330 billion pounds is about 390 billion US dollars, although the exchange rate is fluctuating quite a lot at the moment. And also the Bank of England stepped in last week for emergency measures, slashing interest rates down to 0.1%. So the measures have been put in place there. People are aware that this could take some time. And we all have to kind of rally together in these times of uncertainty.
Thomas, we're thinking of you right now, and I know the feeling is
same here. I'm thinking of you guys too.
Cole. Yeah, thanks so much, man. Thomas Cole, international political analyst, former EU negotiator, former head of the People's Vote campaign. Thank you so much for joining us live from the UK.